Buonasera, my name is Helena from Yummy Italy. I own a small agency in the Bologna Hills organising cookery classes, culinary experiences, food tours with small artisan producers. Now, as you can probably imagine, with the coronavirus situation, my business has been completely wiped out until the autumn. So what am I doing? I'm in the kitchen, fundamentally. Today I decided I was going to make a Bolognese Ragù, and I already had the ingredients. So there were ingredients that I actually had partly in my freezer. So I did have some minced pork in my freezer, but I also went to the supermarket because I do a sort of weekly shop, and I bought some beef and some pancetta to put in my recipe. Now, I don't know who is aware, but there is this huge diatribe regarding what a Bolognese Ragù actually is. So people kind of talk about Bolognese, and I hate that word, but people talk about Bolognese sauce as something generic, meaning a sauce in general. So that can mean anything from tofu to beef to pork to lobster, I've seen. People kind of refer to Bolognese as a sauce. Now, here in Italy, when we talk about ragù, ragù actually means a sauce, usually a meat sauce. Can sometimes mean a vegetable, but usually meat. So we have different types of ragù depending on where you are in Italy. So in Emilia-Romagna, which is where I am, so the capital is Bologna, we have a Bolognese Ragù. You go to Calabria in the south, you have a Calabrian Ragù. You go to Naples, which is sort of almost completely south, but not quite, and you have a Neapolitan Ragù. And the difference is fundamentally in the types of meat that are used, the use of wine and herbs. So today I'm going to show you, I'm not going to say necessarily typical Bolognese Ragù, because there is actually a recipe which has been registered with the Bologna Chamber of Commerce. Now, that is a recipe which is considered to be the benchmark, if you like, for what a Bolognese Ragù should be. Now, I've been here for 20 years. I'm originally from the UK. But I've worked with Michelin star chefs, I've worked with other award-winning chefs, I've worked with your kind of humble trattoria owner, I've worked with grannies, I kind of have my little collection of grannies. And each one actually has their own specific ragù recipe. Now, there's one thing that kind of unites all those. So there's one red line that is common to all of these ragù recipes in Emilia-Romagna, and specifically in Bologna. And that is the use of a soffritto, or what the French call a mirepoix, which is celery, carrot and onion. And the use of pork and beef, usually. The use of wine, not always red, mostly white. The use of absolutely no herbs and no spices. So when you go to the south, you find the use of garlic, you find use of rosemary and oregano and all sorts of other herbs. But in this area, there's absolutely none. So this is the recipe that I'm going to show you now. Excuse me. Sorry, I've got my cats running up and down the stairs like crazy. Like I said, the recipe I'm going to show you is kind of an amalgamation, if you like, of award-winning trattoria and granny, and has kind of reached its its approval from local Bolognese. So I'm happy with it. My students are usually ecstatic with it, like I said, this is what I'm going to do now. So just one more thing, when we talk about a bolognese or Bolognese Ragù, which I prefer to refer to it as, we traditionally eat it with tagliatelle, so long kind of thin ribbons of pasta. And the reason is because they're wider, they pick up the sauce better, they have texture. Spaghetti generally, because they're extruded, because there's a mass market for them, are usually quite smooth. And so it's not the ideal pasta for them. Obviously, like I said, we're in lockdown, we don't have much choice. But if you do have a choice, then I would say eat a ragù with something that's going to pick up the sauce, something with holes like pennette or rigatoni or shells or farfalle or my son's going paccheri, which are kind of the big round long sort of longish tubes. He loves those. But you want something that's going to pick up the sauce and kind of, you know, contain the sauce. So we're going to get on with that now. And what I've got today here, I've got finely chopped carrots and celery. And this is 100 grams of each. Then I have another 100 grams of onion. It's not that, you know, I mean, I don't have precisely 100 grams. If I had kind of 3 carrots and it was like, you know, 104 grams or 108 grams, and obviously I use that. I have 50 grams of pancetta. So you can use bacon quite happily as long as it's not smoked. I have 300 grams of ground pork. I have 600 grams of beef. And this is actually about a 5% fat content. I'm going to use olive oil, so I've got an extra virgin olive oil, which I'm going to use to cook that with. Now, the most important thing, to be honest, is the beginning. It's the sofritto. So people have a tendency to rush that, and you don't want to. Once you've got a really, really, really good base, you're going to end up with an amazing ragù, as long as you cook it properly and according to the order in which it needs to be cooked. So that's the mirepoix, or the onions first. I usually do the onions first a little bit. So the onions. Then I add the celery and carrots, I'm going to show you, and we mix those together. And usually I leave those to cook really, really gently, or fry really gently for about half an hour, because, you know, when they get really beautifully creamy, then you've got an amazing base. And actually, I'm going to be honest, that can also form a base for any tomato sauce. And it can also form a base just for pasta as it is. So if you just have got pasta and you've got those 3 ingredients really cooked beautifully, you don't need anything else. Okay.